Imagine waking up every morning knowing that the entire city wants you dead. Picture yourself walking through crowded streets where conversations stop the moment you appear, where mothers pull their children inside at the sight of you, where your own neighbors spit on the ground as you pass by. Now imagine that despite all this hatred, despite the daily threats and the curses whispered behind your back, you're wealthy. You have a fine stone house. You eat better food than almost anyone in your community. You wear expensive clothes and carry a heavy purse of coins. But here's the terrible truth. You would trade it all, every single coin, every comfort, every possession, just to sit at a table with friends again, just to hear your name spoken without contempt, just to walk into the synagogue one more time. Tonight, we're stepping into one of the most despised, dangerous, and psychologically devastating roles in the ancient world. We're going to experience a full day in the life of a tax collector in first century Judea. And I promise you, nothing you've imagined about this life comes close to the reality. But first, let me welcome you here. I'm so glad you've joined me tonight. Whether you're settling into bed, finding a comfortable position on your couch, or simply seeking a moment of peace at the end of a long day, you're exactly where you need to be. Take a deep breath with me. In through your nose, slowly, filling your lungs completely. Hold it for just a moment, and now release it, letting all the tension of your day flow out with that exhale. You're safe here, you're comfortable, and you have permission to drift off at any point during this journey. In fact, I hope you do. That's exactly what this is for, to guide you gently into deep, peaceful sleep while we explore one of history's most fascinating and tragic roles. Tonight's journey has 3 parts. First, we'll walk through an entire day as a tax collector in Jesus' time. You'll experience the morning hatred, the dangerous midday collections, the constant threat of violence, and the lonely evening in your fine but empty house. Then, when our main story is complete, I have 3 shorter stories for you. 3 moments when everything changed for tax collectors who encountered Jesus. Zacchaeus, the wealthy short man who climbed a tree and found salvation. Matthew, who walked away from everything at 2 simple words. And a powerful dinner party where religious judgment met radical grace. So let's begin. Let yourself sink a little deeper into comfort. Close your eyes if you haven't already, and let's step back 2,000 years into a life that's harder than you ever imagined. The first gray light of dawn filters through the small, high windows of your bedroom. You're awake before the sun fully rises. You always are. Sleep doesn't come easily when you know how many people would celebrate your death. The air is cool against your face, that particular chill of a Judean morning before the heat arrives. You lie on your cushioned sleeping mat, a luxury, softer than the thin pallets most people sleep on, but the comfort doesn't penetrate the knot of dread in your stomach. You know what today holds. The same thing every day holds. You rise slowly, your feet touching the cool stone floor. The house is quiet. Too quiet. There are no sounds of neighbors calling morning greetings to each other. No children laughing as they begin their day. The houses on either side of yours might as well be empty for all the interaction you have with the people inside them. Your servants are already moving about downstairs. You hear the soft shuffle of feet, the quiet clatter of breakfast being prepared. They're efficient, your servants. They do their jobs well, but they're here for the wages you pay them, nothing more. When they look at you, There's no warmth, no loyalty, just a careful neutrality of people who need the money but hate what you represent. You dress yourself in the Roman style, a tunic that marks you immediately as different, as other. Most Jewish men wear traditional robes, their tzitzit fringes visible as required by Torah. But you gave up that right years ago when you took this position. You remember the last time you wore tzitzit, the last time you stood in synagogue, the last time your family looked at you with something other than shame. Moving to the window, you look out over the waking city. Capernaum is beginning to stir. You can see smoke rising from cooking fires. You can hear the distant sounds of the marketplace preparing for the day. Life is happening out there, community, connection, belonging, all the things you sold when you bought this tax collection franchise. Your breakfast sits on the table downstairs. Bread, dried fish, a few olives, some watered wine. It's simple food, but it's reliable. You never go hungry. That's more than many people in this city can say. But as you break the bread and taste the fish, there's an emptiness that food can't fill. You eat alone, always alone. Even with servants in the house, you sit at this table by yourself, chewing in silence, swallowing down both food and isolation. You used to pray in the mornings. You remember the words, the ancient rhythms of morning prayers that every Jewish man speaks. Blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, double quotes, but you can't bring yourself to say them anymore. What right do you have to address the God whose people you betray for profit? The synagogue starts its day without you. It has for years now. You're banned from that space, persona non grata. The rabbis made that clear the moment you took this position. Tax collectors are grouped with sinners, with prostitutes, with the ritually unclean. You're not welcome in the house of God. Through your window, you can see a father walking with his son, the boy's hand in his father's hand, heading toward the market. The man's face is open, relaxed. He belongs here. He's part of something. You set down your cup and stand. The day is waiting. Your quota is waiting. Rome is waiting. And outside, past your locked door and barred windows, an entire community is waiting too, waiting to hate you for one more day. You slide the heavy bolt on your door and step out into the street. Your Roman guards are already there, waiting. They're your shadow, your protection, your only companions. The morning has begun. Before we go further, you need to understand how you ended up here, how anyone ends up as a tax collector, because nobody dreams of this job. Nobody grows up hoping to become the most hated person in their community. You bought this position. That's how it works under Roman occupation. 3 years ago, you were a merchant, moderately successful, dealing in olive oil and wine. You had some savings, some connections, and a desperate desire to rise above your station. When the position of tax collector for this district came available, you saw an opportunity. Rome doesn't directly collect taxes in Judea. That would be too expensive, too complicated. Instead, they auction off the right to collect. It's called tax farming, and it's a brilliant system for Rome. Here's how it works. Rome determines how much tax a region owes. Let's say they decide that your district, this section of Capernaum, and the surrounding villages should produce 30,000 denarii per year. That's the number Rome wants. So they hold an auction, and you, ambitious and foolish in equal measure, you bid for the right to collect those taxes. You bid high because competition was fierce. You offered Rome 35,000 denarii, 5,000 more than their target, for the privilege of becoming a tax collector. You paid it up front. Every coin you'd saved, plus money you borrowed from regional tax farmers, plus debts that still make you wake up sweating in the night. You paid Rome 35,000 denarii for a 1-year contract to collect taxes in this district. Now here's the trap. That money is gone. It's in Rome's treasury. It's not coming back. Your job, your survival, depends on collecting enough from the people to pay back your investment and hopefully make a profit. Rome doesn't care how you do it. They have their money. If you can't collect enough to cover what you paid, that's your problem. Do you see the system? Can you feel how perfect it is from Rome's perspective? They get their tax money up front, guaranteed. They don't have to do the dangerous, dirty work of actually squeezing it from an occupied population. And if you fail, if you can't collect enough, you're destroyed financially, and Rome just auctions the position to someone else next year. You're caught between two grinding wheels, the debt you owe to regional tax farmers above you, and the people you must squeeze below you. There's no mercy in either direction. If you show compassion to the farmer who can't pay, you still owe the same amount to your creditors. If you don't meet your quota, you lose everything, the house, the position, everything you borrowed against. And Rome's enforcers don't forgive debt. So you charge extra. Everyone does. The official tax rate might be 10% of a harvest, but you charge 15. The toll through the gate might officially be 2 coins, but you charge 3. The merchant shipping goods officially owes 5 denarii, but you record 6 and pocket the difference. It's not greed, or at least it didn't start as greed. It's survival. But the people you collect from don't see the system. They don't see the trap you're caught in. They just see you, demanding money they don't have, taking food from their children's mouths, collaborating with the hated Roman occupiers. And they're not wrong. You are collaborating. You are taking more than Rome requires. You are grinding your own people. The fact that you're also being ground doesn't make them hate you less. Above you are the regional tax farmers, the wealthy men who loaned you the money to buy this position. They want their investment back, plus interest. Below you are ordinary people, already struggling under Roman occupation, already giving too much. And in the middle, there's you, wearing Roman-style clothes, protected by Roman soldiers, growing wealthier every month, and more isolated, more hated, more trapped. You can't quit. That's the cruelest part. You signed contracts, took on debts. Walking away means bankruptcy, possibly prison, certainly ruin for your family. And even if you could afford to quit, the stain doesn't wash off. The community has already labeled you traitor, collaborator, sinner. Once a tax collector, always a tax collector in their eyes, so you continue, day after day, month after month, meeting your quota, keeping the money flowing up to the tax farmers, up to Rome, and keeping enough for yourself to maintain this comfortable, miserable existence. The system owns you as surely as Rome owns Judea, and now, with the morning sun climbing higher, it's time to go to work. Your 2 Roman guards fall into step beside you as you emerge from your house. They're always there at the appointed time, these soldiers. Your taxes help pay their wages, and their presence keeps you alive. One is a veteran named Marcus, weathered and cynical. The other is younger, still adjusting to occupation duty in this hostile province. Their armor catches the early sunlight leather and metal, the distinctive red of Roman military tunics beneath. You hear the sound of their sandals on the stone street, their equipment creaking slightly with each step. It's a sound that precedes you everywhere you go, announcing your arrival, the clink of Roman authority. The street ahead is already busy with morning activity. Women heading to the well for water, carrying large clay jars on their shoulders. Men opening shops, setting out goods for the day's trade. Children darting between adults, their voices high and bright with the energy of morning. And then you round the corner into view. The change is immediate and visceral. The conversation between two women stops mid-sentence. They don't look at you, that would be too much acknowledgement, but they angle their bodies away, creating as much distance as possible on the narrow street. A merchant setting up his stall of fabric sees you and spits deliberately on the ground. The sound of it, the wet smack against stone, is loud in the sudden quiet. It's not just an insult. It's a declaration. You are unclean, contaminating even the ground you walk on. A mother with two small children notices your approach. She immediately pulls her children to the side, placing herself between them and you, as if you carry disease. The little girl peers around her mother's leg, curious, until the mother hisses something and the child's eyes go wide before she hides completely. You keep walking. What else can you do? Behind you, you hear the whispers starting. They think they're quiet, but sound carries in these stone-lined streets. Moser, someone mutters. Traitor, shaver ha Romeum, another voice, slightly louder. Friend of the Romans. Marcus, your guard, shifts his hand closer to his sword. He's heard it too. The younger guard tenses. This is how violence often starts, with whispers that grow bolder. But you know this street, this particular gauntlet. The threats rarely escalate past curses. Not here, not in daylight, not with Roman soldiers present. The real danger comes in other places, at other times. The street itself is waking fully now. The smell of bread baking in stone ovens mixes with less pleasant odors, animal waste, human waste, the unwashed bodies of people who bathe once a week if they're fortunate. Dust rises from the packed earth and stone, disturbed by countless feet. You notice a baker's apprentice arranging fresh loaves on a display. The bread smells incredible, yeasty and warm. Your stomach responds even though you've already eaten. That's the power of fresh bread. It bypasses reason and speaks directly to hunger. But when the baker himself sees you, his face hardens. He reaches out and pulls the best loaves back inside, leaving only the older, darker ones visible. The message is clear. The fresh bread is not for you. You could insist. Your money is as good as anyone's. Better, probably. But you've learned that forcing interactions only deepens the hatred. So you walk past, pretending not to notice the slight. The morning sun is climbing, already beginning to warm the stones. In a few hours, this street will be uncomfortably hot, the walls radiating heat, the air thick and still. But for now, it's almost pleasant, would be pleasant, if not for the weight of hostile eyes on your back. You pass a carpenter's workshop. Through the open door, you can see a man planing a piece of wood, the rhythmic scraping sound somehow peaceful. Shavings curl away from the blade, falling in pale spirals to the floor. The smell of fresh-cut wood drifts out. The carpenter doesn't look up, but you see his jaw tighten. You've collected taxes from him twice this year already. His business is good, which means his tax burden is high. He resents every coin. Near the corner where your tax booth is located, you pass a group of young men. They're standing too casually, trying too hard to look like they're just talking. But their eyes follow you with an intensity that makes the hair on your neck stand up. Zealots? Sympathizers? Or just ordinary young men with too much anger and not enough outlets for it? Marcus has noticed them too. His hand is definitely on his sword now. The younger guard has shifted his position slightly, putting himself more between you and the group. One of the young men he can't be more than 20 catches your eye. For a moment your gazes lock. In his eyes you see it clearly. If he could kill you without consequence, he would. Without hesitation, without remorse. You break eye contact and keep walking. This is your life. This is your morning commute. Every day, every single day, the tax booth is just ahead now. Your shoulders are tight with tension. You didn't realize you were carrying. Even your expensive sandals, leather from Rome, soft and well-made, feel somehow wrong on these stones. You walk the same streets as your neighbors, but you walk them utterly alone. Marcus positions himself to one side of the booth. The younger guard takes the other side. You sit down, unroll your scroll of names and amounts, and prepare to begin the day's work. The line is already forming. Your tax collection station is nothing elaborate. It's a simple wooden table positioned near the city gate, where foot traffic is constant and everyone eventually must pass. Behind you is a stone wall. You learned early on never to sit with your back exposed to the crowd. On the table, your scroll listing registered taxpayers, a bronze scale for weighing coins, a ceramic cup filled with charcoal for making marks on the scroll, and a locked wooden box for collected money. The box is reinforced with iron bands. It needs to be. The line before you stretches back 15 deep, maybe 20. People wait with slumped shoulders and resentful eyes. Nobody is here voluntarily. This isn't a transaction. It's an extraction. The morning sun is higher now, beginning to beat down on your neck. You can already feel the heat building. By midday, this stone square will be like sitting in an oven. You gesture for the first person to approach. An older man, his face creased and sun-darkened from years of field work. He carries a basket covered with cloth. Produce tax, you say, your voice falling into the practiced rhythm of business. 10th of your harvest as registered? He pulls back the cloth without speaking, revealing grain. Wheat, by the look of it. Good quality. You reach in, letting the grain run through your fingers, checking for moisture, for quality, for weight. This isn't enough, you say, though honestly, you haven't done the precise calculation. You know it probably is enough, maybe even slightly over. But this is where your profit comes from, in the margins, in the extra you claim. The man's jaw tightens. It's exactly 1/10. I measured it myself. You pick up a handful and let it fall back into the basket slowly, making him wait. The grain is lighter this year, lower quality. I'll need additional to meet the weight requirement. This is the lie you tell. The grain is fine. But he knows the game, and he knows he'll lose. I don't have additional, he says, and you hear the tremor in his voice, anger barely controlled. You let the silence stretch. Behind him, the line shifts restlessly. Marcus's hand rests casually on his sword hilt. Then I'll record a debt against next harvest, you say, with the standard penalty for shortfall. The man's face flushes red. That's not, he starts. But he doesn't finish. What's the point? You both know how this ends. He reaches into the basket and pulls out another handful of grain, adding it to what's already there. It's grain he probably set aside for his family's own bread, but he gives it because the alternative is worse. You nod and make a mark on your scroll. He takes his basket and leaves without another word. Next, a woman approaches, younger, with fearful eyes. She carries a small pouch that clinks softly coins not produce. "Poll tax," she says quietly, barely audible. Everyone owes poll tax, just for existing under Roman rule, just for being counted in the census. You owe 1 denarius per person. It's not a large amount, but for the poorest families, it's crushing. She pours her coins onto your table. You count them slowly. 8 bronze coins, various denominations. You push one back toward her. "This one's Syrian," you say. "Not accepted." It's a lie. Syrian coins are perfectly good. But she doesn't know that. Her face goes pale. "That's all I have. Please, I've been saving for months." You could accept it. "The coin is fine, but you don't. You're short," you say flatly. "The tax is due today. Not tomorrow. Today." Her eyes well with tears. "My husband died this summer. I have 3 children. That's everything we have. This is the moment. This is where you decide what kind of man you are, or rather, this is where you remember that you decided that years ago when you bought this position. The law doesn't make exceptions," you tell her, and even as you say it, you feel something inside you hardening further. You have until sunset. If you can't pay, the debt will be recorded with penalty interest. She stands there, tears now running freely down her face. Behind her, someone in the line mutters, "Dog." You don't look up. She leaves, still carrying that 1 Syrian coin that you rejected, and you know she'll spend the rest of the day desperately trying to find 1 more denarius. Maybe she'll sell something. Maybe a neighbor will take pity on her. Maybe she won't eat for the next week. You make a mark on your scroll and call for the next person. The sun climbs higher. Your cup of water grows warm. The stone radiates heat. Next, a merchant bringing cart tax. He pays with minimal interaction, clearly just wanting this over with. Next, a young man paying temple tax, half a shekel. The irony isn't lost on either of you tax to support the temple that has banned you from entering. Next, a farmer with olive oil paying produce tax. You overestimate his debt by 20%. He argues. You don't budge. He pays. Next, next, next. Your fingers are dusty with charcoal from marking the scroll. Your throat is dry. The wooden box at your side grows heavier with coins, with the small portions of lives you're extracting. And through it all, Marcus and the younger guard stand sentinel, their presence the only thing between you and the violence simmering in this line. This is your job. This is what you do, hour after hour, day after day. By midday, you'll have processed dozens of people. By evening, hundreds. And each one of them will walk away hating you a little more. The morning grinds forward. The sun reaches its peak, brutal and unrelenting. Sweat runs down your back beneath your tunic. You take another sip of warm water and gesture for the next person. This one's different. You can tell immediately. He's a textile merchant. You recognize him from previous collections, and his cart is loaded with fabrics. Fine ones. Purple-dyed cloth that catches the light, crimson linens, blue wool. This is expensive merchandise, which means substantial tax. But it's not the fabrics that put you on alert. It's his eyes. They're calculating, shifting between you and the guards, and there's something rehearsed about his approach. Tax assessment for transport and sale, you say, gesturing to the cart. Of course, he says smoothly. Too smoothly. I have the goods documented here. He produces a scroll listing his inventory. You scan it, doing the mental calculation. The transport tax, the market tax, the sale tax, it adds up quickly. This should be a substantial payment. You name the figure. 30 denarii, based on declared value. He doesn't flinch. That's another warning sign. Most people argue, negotiate, plead. He just nods. 30 denarii, he repeats. That's quite reasonable. No, it's not. You deliberately quoted high, expecting to negotiate down to 25, keeping 5 as your extra profit. But he's not challenging the number. He reaches into his robe and pulls out a leather purse. But instead of counting coins onto your table publicly, he steps closer, lowering his voice. Actually, I was hoping we might reach a more mutually beneficial arrangement. There it is. His hand emerges from the purse with coins, but he doesn't place them on the table. Instead, he lets his hand rest near yours, the coins hidden from the view of the people in line behind him. I was thinking, he says quietly, I could pay you 20 denarii directly, right now, and perhaps we could record the payment as ... 15. The difference would be yours, of course, for your trouble. This is the other side of your work, the side that happens in whispers and hidden exchanges. He's offering you a bribe to underreport his taxes. He pays 20, but you only record 15 on your scroll for Rome to see. He saves 10 denarii. You pocket 5. Everyone wins except Rome, but who cares about Rome? You should refuse. In theory, you're supposed to refuse. But everyone does this. It's expected. It's how the system actually works beneath the official system. Your hand moves toward his, and then you notice them. 3 young men in the crowd, no longer pretending to be casual. They're watching this interaction with focused intensity. They saw him step close to you. They saw the private conversation. They may not know exactly what's being offered, but they know it's something illicit. And worse, one of them has his hand inside his robe, positioned exactly where a man carries a concealed dagger. The Sicarii, the Jewish resistance. The zealots who murder collaborators in broad daylight and disappear into crowds. Marcus has seen them too. His hand is fully on his sword now, and he's shifted his weight, ready to draw. The moment stretches. The merchant is still waiting for your answer, unaware of the danger you've both suddenly stepped into. You pull your hand back. The tax is 30 denarii, you say loudly, clearly, making sure everyone in line can hear. Recorded and paid in full. No negotiations. The merchant's face flashes confusion, then understanding as he notices your eyes tracking the young man. Of course, he says quickly, too quickly. 30 denarii. As you said. He counts out the coins onto your table where everyone can see. 30 denarii, each one clinking onto the wood. You make a loud mark on your scroll. Textile merchant, 30 denarii, paid in full. The young men relax slightly. The one with his hand in his robe lets it drop back to his side. The merchant takes his cart and moves on quickly, probably wondering why you didn't take the bribe. You saved his life, maybe your own too. The zealots don't just kill tax collectors, they kill merchants who bribe them. All collaborators are targets. But here's the bitter truth. You've made this decision before. and you'll make it again. Sometimes you take the bribe. Sometimes you don't. It depends on who's watching, how dangerous the moment feels, how desperate you are to meet your quota. There's no consistent morality here, just survival calculations made in real time. Marcus catches your eye and gives an almost imperceptible nod. He saw what you saw. He knows how close that came to violence. The three young men are leaving now, moving back into the market crowd. But you know they're still out there, always out there, watching, waiting. You take another drink of warm water and your hand trembles slightly. Next, you call, and your voice sounds steadier than you feel. A farmer approaches with a cart of grain. You begin the assessment, trying to ignore the fact that your heart is still racing, trying to forget that you just looked into the eyes of someone who wants you dead. This is why you can't sleep at night. This is why every sound outside your locked door makes you jolt awake. This is why your wealth means nothing. Because at any moment on any ordinary day, someone might decide that today is the day you die. The line continues. The sun beats down. The wooden box fills with coins. And somewhere in the crowd, the zealots watch and remember. The afternoon heat is oppressive now. The stone walls around the marketplace have been absorbing sunlight for hours, and they're radiating it back like bread ovens. Everyone is sweating, moving slowly, seeking whatever shade they can find. You've been at this table for hours. Your back aches. Your eyes hurt from squinting at scrolls in bright sunlight. The seemingly endless line of resentful faces has worn down whatever emotional defenses you started the day with. And then this farmer approaches. You recognize him vaguely, someone you've collected from before, though you can't recall his name. His face has weathered the deep brown of someone who works in fields under this relentless sun. His hands are calloused, the fingernails broken and dirt-stained. This is a man who knows hard labor. He's carrying a large sack, and from the way he struggles with the weight, you know it's grain. "Harvest tax," he says, setting the sack down with a grunt. "Barley, my portion." You untie the sack and look inside. The grain looks acceptable, decent quality, properly dried. You scoop some out, letting it run through your fingers, checking the kernels. "This is your full 10th, you ask. He nods. "Yes, measured it myself, same as every year." You make a show of examining it more closely, though you've already assessed it. Here's where you have to decide. Take what he's given, or press for more. The practical reality is that your afternoon quota is running short. You've had several people pay less than you wanted, and that refused bribe from the textile merchant cost you profit. You need to make up the difference somewhere. "The sack is light," you say. His face changes a flash of desperation. "No, it's not. I measured it exactly. By my assessment, you're short by at least 15%. "That's not," he stops himself, takes a breath. When he speaks again, his voice is pleading. "Please, that's exactly 1/10. I have 5 children. The harvest was poor this year, too little rain in spring. If I give you more, my family won't have enough for winter. This is the moment that haunts you later. This is the decision that wakes you up at night." You look at him, sun-damaged skin, desperate eyes, hands that shake slightly. You believe him. You believe the harvest was poor. You believe he has 5 children. You believe taking more will genuinely hurt his family. But you also know your quota. You know the debt you owe. You know the system you're trapped in. Marcus is watching, but he's not intervening. This is your decision. The Roman guard is here for your protection, not your conscience. You're short, you repeat, and even as you say it, you feel something dying inside you. I'll need another half measure of grain to meet the proper tenth. The farmer's face crumples. I don't have it. What you see is what I have. Then I'll record a debt, you say, reaching for your charcoal. The shortage will be added to next year's tax, with the standard penalty for non-payment. Penalty? His voice cracks. Next year's harvest will have to cover this year's shortage plus penalty plus next year's regular tax. That's impossible. That's the law, you interrupt. You can't let him continue. You can't listen to the full reality of what you're doing. The farmer stands there, and you watch him cycle through emotions. Anger, desperation, resignation. You've seen this pattern before. Everyone goes through it. Please, he says one more time, quieter now. My youngest is only 3 years old. You don't respond. You're making the mark on your scroll. Shortage recorded, penalty assigned, next year's burden increased. The farmer reaches into the sack with both hands and pulls out another measure of grain. His movements are jerky, angry. He pours it onto your weighing scale more than you asked for, actually. More than the shortage you claimed. There, he says bitterly. Is that enough? Is that sufficient for Rome and for you? You don't answer. You make the final mark on your scroll and gesture for him to take his sack and go. He picks up the now lighter sack, and you realize you've just taken food from children's mouths. Not metaphorically, literally. That grain he just gave you was grain that would have been bread for his family. As he walks away, you hear him mutter something in Hebrew. You don't catch all of it, but you hear enough. May God judge between us. You sit there, staring at the grain he left, and for a moment you can't remember why you thought this job was worth it. The money in your locked box, the fine house waiting for you, the expensive clothes. What do any of these things matter when you have to look into a desperate father's eyes and take food from his children? But the moment passes, because the lion is still there, still waiting, and your quota is still not met, and the system doesn't care about your conscience. Next, you call, and your voice sounds hollow, even to your own ears. The sun beats down. The afternoon grinds forward, and the weight of that farmer's curse sits heavy on your shoulders. The afternoon is waning, the worst of the heat finally beginning to release its grip. Your water cup is empty. Your throat is dust dry. The scroll in front of you is covered in charcoal marks, each one representing money extracted, lives squeezed, resentment earned. You're calculating whether you've met quota for the day, mentally tallying the take in your locked box when you hear it, a shift in the crowd's energy. The subtle change that happens when someone important appears. You look up, and immediately you know this will be different. A Pharisee is approaching your station. You can tell his status from 50 paces away, the elaborate tzitzit fringes on his garment, longer and more ornate than the simple ones ordinary men wear. His phylacteries are prominently displayed on his forehead and arm, the small leather boxes containing Torah, verses that mark him as devout. His robes are pristine, unstained by the dust that covers everyone else. He's not here to pay taxes. Pharisees don't approach tax collectors for business. They avoid even walking on the same side of the street when possible, for fear of becoming ritually contaminated by proximity to sinners. No, he's here for something else. The crowd seems to sense it too. People in line straighten up, paying attention. A public confrontation with a Pharisee is always entertainment, especially when a tax collector is the target. He stops about 10 feet from your table, maintaining the distance that ritual purity requires. Close enough to be heard, far enough to avoid contamination. You, he says, and his voice carries that particular tone of moral authority that religious leaders cultivate. You who sit in the seat of extortion, you don't respond. What would be the point? He continues, raising his voice so the growing crowd can hear. It is written in the Torah, "You shall not oppress your neighbor or rob him." Yet here you sit, day after day, robbing your own people to fill the coffers of our oppressors. The crowd murmurs approval. This is what they've all been thinking, but didn't dare say with Roman guards present. The Pharisee has the religious authority and the social protection to say it aloud. You have made yourself tamai, he pronounces, using the Hebrew word for ritually unclean. Spiritually dead. You cannot enter the house of God. You cannot participate in festivals. Your very presence defiles. He's not telling you anything you don't know. But hearing it spoken aloud in front of all these people makes it more real somehow. The prophet Malachi wrote, he continues, and now he's in full sermon mode. You are cursed with a curse, for you are robbing me, the whole nation, of you. You rob God himself when you rob his people. Marcus shifts beside you, uncomfortable with where this might be going. But the Pharisee is careful. He's not inciting violence, just pronouncing judgment. That's allowed even under Roman occupation. Your money is blood money, the Pharisee declares. Your wealth is built on the suffering of widows and orphans. Your house is beautiful, but it is built on sin. And there it is, the thing that cuts deepest, because he's right, completely, devastatingly right. You have chosen Rome over your own people, he says. You have chosen wealth over righteousness. And until you repent, until you make restitution for all you have stolen, you are dead to the community, dead to God. The crowd is fully engaged now, nodding, some calling out agreement. You see faces in the crowd lighting up with righteous anger, emboldened by the Pharisee's words. He adjusts his phylacteries, a gesture that emphasizes his piety, his connection to God, everything you've lost. May the Holy One, blessed be he, judge between us, he says. May he remember your deeds and require them of you. It's a curse, essentially, a religious pronouncing of divine judgment. And then he does something that drives the point home. He turns his back on you and walks away. In Jewish culture, turning your back is the ultimate expression of contempt. You're not worth facing. You're not worth acknowledging as fully human. The crowd parts for him, showing him the respect they never show you. People actually bow slightly as he passes. He's righteous. He's clean. He's everything you're not. You sit there, staring at your scroll, at the charcoal marks, at the locked box of coins. Your hands are shaking slightly from anger or shame. You're not sure which. The worst part is that you can't even disagree with him. He's right about all of it. You are oppressing your neighbors. You are robbing people. You have chosen money over community, over God, over everything your parents raised you to value. But what he doesn't understand, what none of them understand, is that the choice was made years ago, and there's no way back. The door, he says, is open to repentance. It's not. Not really. You owe too much to too many people. You're in too deep. The crowd slowly returns to normal activity, but the energy has changed. The Pharisees' words have given them permission to hate you more openly, more righteously. Next you call, but your voice is rough, barely audible. A woman approaches, but she won't meet your eyes. No one will meet your eyes now. The sun is lower in the sky, beginning its descent toward evening. Your longest shadow stretches out before you, dark and distorted on the stone ground. Just a few more hours. Just a few more people. Then you can return to your fine house and count your blood money and try to convince yourself that survival justifies everything. The day grinds on. The sun is finally setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and deep red. The marketplace is emptying, people heading home to families, to evening meals, to the comfort of belonging to something larger than themselves. You're packing up your station. The scroll gets rolled carefully. It's evidence, documentation, proof of collection for the Roman authorities above you. The bronze scale, the charcoal cup, all of it gets stored away. And then there's the locked box. You lift it, testing the weight. It's heavy, satisfyingly heavy. This has been a good day, financially speaking. You've met quota, and then some. The extra you skimmed, the overcharges you imposed, the penalties you assigned, they've all added up. Marcus and the younger guard form up beside you again. The walk home is always the most dangerous part of the day. You're carrying money, visible money, through streets that hate you. The locked box might as well have a target painted on it. The three of you begin the walk back to your house. The streets are different in evening light, softer somehow. The harsh angles of midday are gentled by golden light and lengthening shadows. Cooking fires are lit inside houses, and the smell of evening meals drifts out: roasted meat, baking bread, lentil stew. Your stomach responds to the smells even though you're not particularly hungry. It's not the food you're craving. It's the context. The family gathered around a meal. The voices talking and laughing. The belonging. You pass by a house where the door is open to catch the evening breeze. Inside you glimpse a family at their meal. Father, mother, 3 children gathered around a low table. They're breaking bread together, passing a bowl of something, talking. The smallest child is laughing at something his father said. They look up and see you passing. The father's expression hardens immediately. He stands and walks to the door, closing it firmly, shutting you out. You keep walking. A group of men are standing near a well, talking quietly in the evening cool. As you approach, they fall silent. They watch you pass with flat, hostile eyes. One of them spits after you're past, and you hear it hit the ground. Marcus's hand is on his sword again. The evening streets are more dangerous than midday, fewer witnesses, more shadows, easier for someone to strike and disappear. But you make it to your street, to your house, without incident. The door is heavy wood, reinforced with iron bands. You have good locks, the best money can buy. Because when you're as hated as you are, security isn't optional. You unlock the door, step inside, and immediately lock it again behind you. The heavy bolt slides home with a solid thunk. That sound, the sound of being locked in, is one of the most familiar sounds of your life. Marcus and the younger guard take their leave. They'll be back tomorrow morning. Same time, same routine. You're alone now. The house is quiet. Your servants have prepared an evening meal, but they're staying out of sight in their quarters. They prefer not to interact with you more than necessary. You carry the locked box to your private room and set it on your table. The key hangs around your neck on a leather cord. You unlock the box and begin the evening ritual, counting the day's take. Coins. So many coins. You separate them into piles. Denarii, drachmas, the smaller bronze coins, even a few gold coins from wealthier merchants. Each pile represents someone's labor, someone's harvest, someone's livelihood. You count carefully, making notations in your private scroll, the real one, not the one you show to Rome. Official collection for Rome, 68 denarii and assorted smaller coins. Your actual collection, 92 denarii and assorted smaller coins. The difference, 24 denarii profit in one day. 24 denarii is more than most people in this city earn in a month. You made it in one day. Tomorrow, you'll make more. The day after, more still. By the end of the year, if you maintain this pace, you'll be one of the wealthiest men in Capernaum. You'll have enough to pay back the loans that bought you this position, enough to invest, enough to live very comfortably indeed. And you'll still be eating every meal alone. You stack the coins into your strong box, another locked box, this one built into the wall of your room. Your accumulated wealth sits there, growing every day, doing nothing except proving that you successfully extracted it from your neighbors. Your evening meal is waiting in the next room. Your servant has left it on the table. Roasted fish, fresh bread, olives, good wine. It's better than what most people in the city are eating tonight. Better than what that farmer with 5 children is eating, now that you've taken his extra grain. You sit down to eat, alone in your dining room. The oil lamp flickers, casting dancing shadows on the walls. The walls are stone, well built. This is a nice house. A very nice house. You take a bite of the fish. It's well prepared, seasoned properly, still warm. It tastes like ashes in your mouth. You pour wine into your cup. It's good wine, expensive. It tastes like guilt. You eat because your body needs food, but there's no enjoyment in it. How can there be? You're eating food purchased with money that you extracted from people who now have less. Your comfort is built on their discomfort. The Pharisees' words echo in your mind. Blood money, built on sign, dead to God. You finish eating mechanically and push the plate away. The house is so quiet. It's always quiet. Your servants move silently, wanting to avoid you. No neighbors stop by. They never do. No friends visit. You don't have friends anymore. Family, they're ashamed of you. They don't come. You walk to your window and look out over the darkening city. Lights are appearing in windows as families light their evening lamps. You can hear distant laughter, conversation, life happening. But in your fine house there's just silence and the weight of the locked strongbox. You return to your room and lie down on your cushioned sleeping mat. The night stretches ahead, long and sleepless as always. Tomorrow you'll do it all again, and the day after that, and the day after that, because this is your life now. This is what you purchased when you bought that tax collection franchise. Wealth without worth, comfort without peace, survival without living. The lamp burns low. The darkness deepens. And somewhere in that darkness you wonder, is this it? Is this all there is? Just an endless cycle of extraction and isolation until you die, probably violently, probably at the hands of zealots who see you as a traitor deserving death. There has to be more. There has to be. But from where you're sitting, locked in your fine house with your blood money counted and stored, you can't see it. The night closes in. But now let me tell you about a day when everything changed for one tax collector. His name was Zacchaeus, and his story is one of the most remarkable transformations in all of ancient history. Zacchaeus wasn't just a tax collector. He was a chief tax collector. That means he was at the top of the extraction system. He managed other tax collectors, took a cut from their collections, and answered directly to the Roman regional governors. In modern terms, he was wealthy, extremely wealthy. He lived in Jericho, that ancient city near the Jordan River, and he had everything money could buy. A mansion, servants, fine clothes, exotic foods, security, everything, except meaning, except peace, except a single friend who wasn't on his payroll. Zacchaeus was also short. The Gospel of Luke specifically mentions this detail, and it's important because it humanizes him. Here's this powerful, wealthy, feared man, and he's short. Probably mocked for it as a child. Probably still sensitive about it as an adult. And then Jesus came to Jericho. The news spread through the city like wildfire. Jesus of Nazareth, the rabbi who healed people, who taught with authority, who somehow seemed to actually care about sinners and outcasts, he was coming through Jericho. He might even stop there, for reasons Zacchaeus himself probably couldn't fully explain. He wanted to see this Jesus. Maybe he'd heard the stories about Jesus eating with tax collectors. Maybe he'd heard about Matthew, the tax collector who left everything to follow Jesus. Maybe something in him was desperate for hope that life could be different. So Zacchaeus decided to go see Jesus when he passed through town. But there was a problem. Zacchaeus was short, and the crowd lining the streets was thick. People were pressed together, jostling for position, everyone wanting to see the famous rabbi. Zacchaeus tried to push through. Can you imagine? One of the most powerful men in Jericho trying to squeeze through a crowd of the very people he'd been extorting for years. They recognized him immediately, and they didn't let him through. Tax collector, someone muttered, deliberately standing their ground. No room for traitors, another said, creating a wall with their body. The crowd that parted for others closed ranks against Zacchaeus. They weren't going to make this easy for him. Why should they? He'd made their lives hard enough. Zacchaeus could have given up. He could have returned to his mansion, to his money, to his comfortable isolation. That's what a dignified man would have done. Instead, he ran ahead of the crowd, this wealthy, powerful chief tax collector, running through streets like a child to a place where he knew Jesus would pass. And there he saw it, a sycamore fig tree with sturdy branches. Now, understand what happened next. Zacchaeus was wearing expensive robes, the kind that mark you as wealthy. He was probably 50 years old, maybe older. He held one of the most powerful positions in the city, and he climbed that tree. He gathered his robes, found handholds in the rough bark, and pulled himself up branch by branch, undignified, ridiculous. A wealthy man climbing a tree like a boy stealing figs. But he did it, because whatever was driving him, curiosity, desperation, hope, it was stronger than pride. So there he sat, perched in the branches, hidden among the leaves, when Jesus approached. The crowd was thick below, people calling out, trying to get Jesus' attention. Jesus was walking, teaching, engaging with people, and then he stopped. Right beneath Zacchaeus' tree, Jesus stopped and looked up. Their eyes met, and Jesus did something that no one, absolutely no one, expected. He called him by name. "Zacchaeus," Jesus said, looking right up into that tree, "come down immediately. I must stay at your house today." The crowd went silent, shocked, scandalized. Did Jesus just invite himself to a tax collector's house? Does he know who Zacchaeus is? Does he understand what he just did? Zacchaeus scrambled down from that tree so fast he probably scraped his expensive robes on the bark. He didn't care. Jesus knew his name. Jesus wanted to stay at his house. For the first time in years, maybe decades, someone looked at Zacchaeus and saw a person worth knowing. Not a source of money, not a traitor, not a tool of Rome, a person. As they walked together toward Zacchaeus' house, the crowd muttered and complained. "He has gone to be the guest of a sinner," they said. The religious people were scandalized. The ordinary people were confused. Why would Jesus, who could stay anywhere, choose to stay with the most hated man in Jericho? But something was happening in Zacchaeus' heart, something that money had never touched, that wealth had never reached. When they arrived at his house, that beautiful, empty mansion, Zacchaeus stood before Jesus and the crowd that had followed, and made a declaration that stunned everyone. "Look, Lord," he said, his voice shaking but certain. "Here and now I give half of my possessions to the poor." Half, not a tithe, not a token amount, half of everything he owned. But he wasn't finished. "And if I have cheated anybody out of anything, and everyone knew he had, that was literally his job, I will pay back 4 times the amount." 4 times. The law of Moses required paying back what you stole, plus 20%. Zacchaeus was volunteering 400% restitution. Do the math. Half his wealth to the poor immediately, then 4 times repayment for everything he'd extorted. Zacchaeus was voluntarily bankrupting himself. He was dismantling his entire life, his entire identity as a wealthy man. Why? Because in Jesus' acceptance, in being seen and known and still valued, Zacchaeus had found something worth more than all his accumulated coins. Jesus looked at him, this short, wealthy, formerly corrupt chief tax collector, who was giving away his security, his identity, his future, and said something beautiful. "Today salvation has come to this house because this man, too, is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost." This man, too, is a son of Abraham. Not a traitor, not a tool of Rome, not a sinner beyond redemption. A son of Abraham, a member of the family, belonging restored. The impossible had happened. The man trapped in the system, the wealthy tax collector who seemed beyond hope, had found a way out, not through his own effort, but through being seen, being known, being accepted. Zacchaeus had been sitting in his own tree of isolation, looking down on a life he couldn't fully join, and Jesus had looked up at him and said, "Come down, I see you. Come down and let's share a meal together." That invitation changed everything. Now let me tell you about another tax collector, one whose transformation was even more immediate and costly. His name was Matthew, though he was also called Levi, and his encounter with Jesus lasted exactly as long as it took Jesus to say 2 words. Matthew worked in Capernaum, the same fishing town where Peter and Andrew had their business. His tax booth was positioned at the customs station, where merchants and fishermen had to pay taxes on goods being transported or sold. It was the kind of position that guaranteed steady income. Capernaum was a busy commercial centerfish from the Sea of Galilee, goods traveling between territories, constant traffic. The money flowed through Matthew's hands daily. And like every tax collector, Matthew was isolated, wealthy, and probably miserable. He had the routine down. Each morning set up the booth. Each day collect from resentful people who had no choice. Each evening count the money and return home alone. He probably lived in a nice house, ate good food, and wondered why none of it filled the emptiness. And then one day, Jesus walked past his tax booth. Matthew had probably heard of Jesus. Everyone had. The teacher from Nazareth who performed miracles, who explained the Torah in ways that made sense, who seemed to genuinely care about ordinary people. The one who was drawing crowds wherever he went. Jesus was walking along the shore with his disciples fishermen, mostly people Matthew probably collected taxes from regularly. They were talking, laughing, moving with the easy camaraderie of people who belong together. And then Jesus stopped. Right in front of Matthew's tax booth, their eyes met. And Jesus said 2 words. "Follow me." That's it. No long explanation. No promise of what following would mean. No reassurance about finances or future. Just 2 words. Follow me. Matthew had a choice to make, and he had to make it instantly. This wasn't like Zacchaeus, who had time to climb down from a tree and talk with Jesus. This was immediate. Stay or go. The old life or something completely unknown. Matthew stood up, and he walked away from his tax booth. Think about what that meant. The table was probably still covered with his working tools, his scroll, his scale, his collection box. There may have been money on the table from a transaction he was in the middle of completing. His records of who owed what, his documentation for Rome, his proof of collections, all of it was there, and he just walked away. He didn't say, "Let me finish this transaction." He didn't say, "Give me a day to settle my accounts." He didn't say, "I need to notify Rome that I'm quitting." He stood up and followed Jesus. Can you imagine the person in line at his booth? One moment they're paying taxes to Matthew. The next moment Matthew is walking away mid-transaction, leaving the money box open, following some rabbi down the street. Matthew didn't take the money. He didn't pack up his tools. He left everything exactly as it was and walked away from the life he'd built, or the life that had trapped him. That evening, Matthew hosted a dinner. It was probably at his house, using his resources, his food, his money, the last meal he'd provide from his tax collector earnings. And who did he invite? Other tax collectors. His colleagues in extraction, his fellow outcasts. The only people who would socialize with him. And Jesus came. Jesus ate with them. This is what scandalized the Pharisees more than almost anything else Jesus did. They watched through windows, they stood outside, and they couldn't believe what they were seeing. Why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners? They demanded of Jesus' disciples. It wasn't really a question. It was an accusation. Eating with someone in ancient Jewish culture meant acceptance, fellowship, shared identity. Refusing to eat with tax collectors was one of the primary ways religious people maintained their separation, their purity, their moral superiority. But there was Jesus, reclining at a table with the most hated men in town, sharing food, laughing, talking, treating them like they were worth knowing. Jesus heard the Pharisees' question, and his answer became one of his most famous statements. It is not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick. I have not come to call the righteous, but sinners. In that moment, Jesus reframed everything. The Pharisees saw tax collectors as too sinful to associate with. Jesus saw them as exactly the people who needed what he offered. The religious leaders erected walls. Jesus broke them down. And Matthew? Matthew never went back to his tax booth. He became one of Jesus' closest disciples. He traveled with him, learned from him, watched him heal and teach and transform lives. And eventually Matthew wrote a gospel. One of the 4 accounts of Jesus' life that we still read today. The tax collector who kept detailed records became the disciple who carefully documented Jesus' teachings, from extortion to gospel, from isolation to community, from death to life, all because he heard 2 words, "Follow me," and chose to believe that following Jesus into the unknown was better than staying in the security of his tax booth. Matthew's tax booth stayed empty that day, and presumably someone else eventually claimed the position. But Matthew found something infinitely more valuable than the quota he'd been trying to meet. He found purpose. He found belonging. He found redemption. And it all started with the courage to walk away from everything at 2 words, from someone who saw him not as a tax collector, but as a man worth calling. For our final story tonight, let me tell you about a dinner party that revealed the massive divide between religious judgment and radical grace. It's a story about a Pharisee, a woman with a scandalous reputation, and Jesus sitting in the middle, showing everyone what actually matters. A Pharisee named Simon invited Jesus to dinner at his house. This was probably meant as an honor. Pharisees didn't typically invite just anyone to dine. But there is something interesting about this invitation. Simon didn't extend to Jesus the normal courtesies a host should show an honored guest. In first-century Jewish culture, when an honored guest arrived, the host provided 3 things: water to wash the guest's feet. Roads were dusty. People wore sandals. This was basic hospitality. A kiss of greeting on the cheek, a sign of welcome and respect, and oil to anoint the guest's head, a mark of honor. Simon provided none of these. Jesus arrived, and Simon just motioned him to recline at the table. No foot washing, no kiss, no oil. It was a subtle insult, probably intentional. Simon was curious about Jesus, willing to host him, but not willing to fully honor him. The dinner proceeded. Other guests were there, probably other Pharisees, religious leaders, people who prided themselves on their careful observance of the law. They reclined on cushions around a low table, eating, talking, evaluating this rabbi who was becoming so famous. And then she entered. A woman, and everyone knew immediately what kind of woman she was. Luke's gospel calls her a woman who had lived a sinful life. The implication is clear. She was probably a prostitute, or at least someone with a badly damaged reputation. She shouldn't have been there. Women didn't crash dinner parties. Sinful women definitely didn't approach religious leaders. Everything about her presence was wrong, scandalous, uncomfortable. But she came anyway, carrying an alabaster jar of expensive perfume. And she approached Jesus. She stood behind him as he reclined at the table, and she began to weep. Not quiet, dignified tears, but full body-shaking sobs. Her tears fell on Jesus' feet, the feet that Simon hadn't bothered to have washed. And then she did something even more shocking. She let down her hair and used it to wipe Jesus' feet. In that culture, a woman letting down her hair in public was scandalous. Hair was considered intimate, private. A respectable woman kept her hair covered and bound. For this woman to let her hair down and touch a rabbi's feet with it was beyond improper. But she didn't stop. She kissed his feet repeatedly. And then she opened that alabaster jar expensive perfume, probably worth several months' wages, and poured it on his feet. The room went silent. Everyone was staring. The combination of who she was, what she was doing, and Jesus' failure to stop her was creating a massive scandal. Simon was watching Jesus carefully, and Luke tells us exactly what Simon was thinking. If this man were a prophet, he would know who is touching him and what kind of woman she is, that she is a sinner. In other words, if Jesus were really from God, he'd know she's unclean, and he'd reject her touch. The fact that he's letting her do this proves he's not a real prophet. But Jesus, who read people's hearts the way others read scrolls, turned to Simon and said, "Simon, I have something to tell you." "Tell me." "Teacher," Simon replied, probably confident that Jesus was about to address the scandalous scene. Instead, Jesus told a parable. 2 people owed money to a certain moneylender. One owed him 500 denarii and the other 50. Neither of them had the money to pay him back, so he forgave the debts of both. Now, which of them will love him more? Simon answered, probably confused about where this was going. "I suppose the one who had the bigger debt forgiven." "You have judged correctly," Jesus said. And then Jesus did something brilliant. He turned toward the woman, still kneeling there, tears still wet on his feet, and said to Simon, "Do you see this woman?" It's such a simple question, but it cuts deep. Do you see her? Really see her? Not as a category, not as a scandal, not as that kind of woman. Do you see her as a person? "I came into your house," Jesus continued. "You did not give me any water for my feet, but she wet my feet with her tears and wiped them with her hair. You did not give me a kiss, but this woman from the time I entered has not stopped kissing my feet. You did not put oil on my head, but she has poured perfume on my feet." Every sentence was an indictment. Simon the Pharisee, the religious leader, the man who prided himself on following the law, he hadn't shown Jesus basic courtesy. But this woman, this sinner, she had honored Jesus more than Simon had. Therefore, Jesus said, "I tell you, her many sins have been forgiven, as her great love has shown. But whoever has been forgiven little loves little." And then Jesus turned to the woman and spoke directly to her for the first time. "Your sins are forgiven." The room erupted with whispered conversation. Who is this who even forgives sins? People demanded. That was God's prerogative. How dare this rabbi presume to forgive sins? But Jesus wasn't finished. Looking at the woman, this broken, weeping, loving woman, he said, "Your faith has saved you. Go in peace, go in peace." Not go and sin no more, though he said that to others. Not your behavior was acceptable, just go in peace. You're forgiven, you're free, you're known and loved. This is the pattern Jesus established again and again. Religious people who thought they were close to God were often far from understanding his heart, while sinners, tax collectors, prostitutes, outcasts recognized their need and found grace. Simon didn't love much because he didn't think he needed much forgiveness. He was righteous, observant, clean. In his mind he was fine before God, but the woman knew her need. She knew her sins were many, and when she encountered someone who offered forgiveness instead of judgment, acceptance instead of condemnation, she responded with extravagant love. This is why tax collectors flocked to Jesus. This is why the outcasts, the sinners, the people who knew they were broken, kept showing up wherever Jesus was. Not because he ignored their sin, not because he pretended they were fine, but because he offered them something the Pharisees never could: forgiveness, acceptance, restoration, a way back into the family. The religious leaders offered judgment. You're unclean. You're a sinner. You're dead to God. Jesus offered grace. Your sins are forgiven. Go in peace. And for people trapped in lives of sin and shame, whether prostitutes or tax collectors, or anyone else who knew they were far from God, that grace was worth more than anything else in the world. So we've walked through a day as a tax collector in Jesus' time. We've felt the morning hatred, the midday extraction, the constant threat of violence, the evening isolation. We've experienced what it means to be wealthy but socially dead, to have everything and nothing simultaneously. And then we saw 3 moments of transformation. Zacchaeus and his tree, finding salvation when Jesus looked up and called his name. Matthew at his tax booth, walking away from everything at 2 words. And that dinner party where a sinful woman showed more love than a Pharisee, more honor than the host, because she knew she needed grace. These stories remind us that no one is too far gone, no one is beyond redemption, no one is locked so deeply in their trap that transformation is impossible. The tax collectors thought they were finished. Their communities thought they were lost. The religious leaders declared them spiritually dead. But Jesus saw them differently. He saw people. He saw need. He saw the possibility of change. And when they encountered him, whether climbing a tree, leaving a tax booth, or weeping at his feet, they found that grace is stronger than shame, love is stronger than hatred, and belonging is worth more than any amount of wealth. May you rest in that truth tonight. May you know that whatever trap you feel caught in, whatever isolation you experience, whatever shame you carry, there is grace available. There is always a way back. There is always someone who sees you not as a category or a problem, but as a beloved person worth knowing. Let yourself rest now. Let the tension of these stories drain away. Let the hard truths and the beautiful grace both settle gently into your heart. You're safe. You're valued. You're known. And as you drift off to sleep, may you find peace in the knowledge that the same Jesus who called tax collectors to follow him, who ate with sinners, who offered forgiveness freely, that same grace is available today for you for anyone who reaches out for it. Sleep well. Rest deeply. Let the silence carry you into peaceful dreams. Good night.